for me as a Palestinian, it's not really a big issue where the US embassy is set up in Palestine. I know that people made a fuss about this when the embassy was moved from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. It was an act of symbolism, but for me, Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, Hebron, Jaffa, Haifa, Safad, Be'er Shaba, where my mother was born, are all Palestine. So that's not really the issue. Second, the deal of the century was actually about legitimizing the status quo and not creating a new one, because much of what Trump was talking about in his peace plan had already been achieved on the ground, had already been accomplished by successive Israeli governments, especially since Oslo. Actually, there has been more colonization since Oslo than before. More confiscation of land, more expansion of settlements, more demolitions, you name it. Now, the United States of America is undergoing a change, definitely. I recognize that. But it hasn't yet reached the decision-making circles. But it is promising in a sense that civil society, political aspects of political society, people are talking about things. There was a brilliant article by a Harvard scholar in foreign policy about the necessity that the United States of America change its special relationship with Israel to a normal relationship. I mean, that's something probably very few people dared talk about before. Some House of Representative members, some Senate members are voicing their anger toward what Israel is doing. So there is something going on. But of course, at the official level, Biden is as Zionist as any previous president. So nothing much has changed, but I'm optimistic that time is on our side rather than on the side of the Zionists. Now, the Palestinians will not wait for the US to change its position. They've been struggling, they will continue to struggle. I've been inside Palestine, I would have been involved probably actively than just politically, or my children and my grandchildren, although they're born and raised outside Palestine, they're so attached to Palestine and the issue. We have no other more important issue than this. We will continue the struggle. But of course, it is our struggle that will impose a change on others, just like what happened in South Africa. I was listening to the South African president the other day. I think he was interviewed by a Belgian TV channel, if I'm not mistaken. And he even referred to armed struggle as a means used by the South African people. Because, you see, forget about whatever anybody says. If your home is occupied, if you are invaded, if your rights are denied, sweet words won't help you regain any of this nonsense. I mean, the Palestinians, even some of the Palestinians tried this. And that's the reason we have Hamas today, because Fatah thought by going through Oslo, they might be able to achieve something. They are in a much worse situation than before. And they are no longer the national liberation movement that the Palestinians recognized at one time. So even if Hamas were to change tomorrow and become like Fatah, there will be another project, because the struggle will continue. So it is the struggle of the Palestinians, their steadfastness, that will force a change on America, on Western Europe, anywhere in the world. And I still remember immediately after the victory Hamas accomplished in the 2006 elections, I had a discussion with a senior minister in a European government. And he said to me that his government was considering talking to Hamas, because now there's a new reality. But of course, there was the three conditions of the quartet and all this nonsense that excluded Hamas until and unless it accepted Israel's right to exist, etc. So nothing, and there was also a change of heart for a number of reasons. But events on the ground, as we saw in the recent confrontation, are the ones that will force the world to change its position.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Azzam. So, quick fire questions. The first one is you wrote a book about Hamas history from within. So, there are suggestions that because Hamas is being in power, albeit elected democratically, but as Hamas being labeled as a terrorist organization by some quarters, is this the reason why the peace process is being delayed? So what is your opinion on that? And I think we would like to hear as well your opinion on the two-state versus one-state solution. Yes.
No, the whole peace process was a plot against Palestine. It's from Madrid onwards. The idea was to contain the Palestinian struggle and finish it off. And this is what they did. And when Yasser Arafat realized his big mistake in 2000, returning from Camp David in America, he decided to turn the table and probably thinking he could pressure the Israelis into giving him something because he promised the people something. They killed him. And they went on rampage. They destroyed his Palestinian Authority. They destroyed almost the entire infrastructure. And then they brought Mahmoud Abbas, who agreed to resume what Yasser Arafat probably thought it was not possible to continue. So forget about the peace process. There hasn't been a peace process. There has been a process with the objective of empowering the occupation. That's it. Whatever people say. Now, the fact that Hamas is labeled as a terrorist, that's a big honor. That's a great honor. Because if you are a national liberation movement and your enemies are calling you a terrorist, that means you are doing the right thing. Nelson Mandela was called a terrorist. Margaret Thatcher said that that man would never be allowed to set foot on British soil. And guess what? He arrived and was given a hero's welcome. And I once gave a speech in Trafalgar Square. And I said, just like Mandela came and set foot on this soil, I'm hoping that one day Sheikh Ahmed Yassin, he was still alive at the time, that Sheikh Ahmed Yassin would come here because he is also a freedom fighter. So it doesn't matter how people label us. Nowadays, you don't have to carry a machine gun to be called a terrorist. Just speak the truth and they call you a terrorist. Or they call courageous Jews who speak against Zionism, they call them self-hating Jews. They have all sorts of labels in their closets. They just bring them out and stick them to you. And if you are going to be disturbed by this or put off, then you might as well just sit home and do nothing. No, it doesn't matter what they call us. It doesn't matter what they label us. On numerous occasions, on BBC, on CNN, and other channels, they would say to me, oh, would you denounce the terrorists who are doing this and that to civilian Israelis? I say, I would definitely condemn those who force them to do this. This is what terrorism is about. Terrorism is to force someone out of their home, leave them no option but to resort to violence. Now, who is the terrorist? It's the one who is forcing you to use violence, not yourself, because you've been denied your humanity, you've been denied your livelihood, you've been, like in Gaza, under siege, no, you cannot get medicine for your children, you cannot get food for them. It's just a terrible situation. So labeling doesn't frighten us.
Two state, one state, what is your take on that?
One state, two state? Look, I prefer to call it a situation rather than a solution, because that's not a solution. The only solution to any problem is to get rid of the causes of the problem. What is the cause of the problem in Palestine? Well, they took my mother's house. Okay, give my mother back her house, or my mother is already dead. But I can tell you, sorry about this, someone is trying to call. My mother, until she died, if you ask her what her vision was, she wanted to go back to the house in which she was born and raised until 1948 in Beersheba. Now, my mother was born during the British Mandate. Her father was born during the Ottoman Empire. Our great ancestor, Tamim ad-Dari, was born under the Byzantine Empire. It didn't matter to us who ruled Palestine and whether it was an independent state or a part of an empire. We were still in our houses. We were in our land. We were farming our grapes and our olives, etc. So you see, talking about solutions is, as Professor Elan Pape rightly said, is a colonial sort of arrangement. For me, if, as I explained in my book, had the Israelis agreed to a long-term truce as offered by Sheikh Ahmed Yassin and later on by Hamas leadership, we would have ended up temporarily in a two-state situation. But that would not have been the solution, because the Palestinian refugees around the world want to see justice. And the two-state solution does not provide justice to anyone. Now, is it going to be a one-state solution? I don't know. That's possible. But that, again, is a situation that comes out of how the conflict is managed. Like in the case of South Africa. In the case of South Africa, the solution was not a single state, as people say. That was the fruit, that was the outcome. The solution was undoing apartheid. Similarly, in Palestine, the solution is undoing Zionism. Once you undo Zionism, we have no problem with the Jews. I personally have no problem with the Jews. I have so many Jewish friends who I see eye with them, and we can recognize that there is justice here, there is oppression here on the basis of our humanity. Muslims, Jews, and Christians lived together for centuries. There was no problem. Zionism created the problem. Zionism is telling its adherents that because you happen to be Jewish, you have the right to come to Azzam Tamimi's mother's house, throw her out, take it from her, and turn it into your own residence, just because you happen to be Jewish. I mean, imagine if a Muslim comes to Britain and says to a British neighbor, oh, God, Allah says to me, this is my house, you must come out. I mean, people would send them to a madhouse, right? Probably Zionists should go to a madhouse, because it just doesn't make sense that because you happen to be Jewish, you are favored in a sense that you can persecute other people. It's not acceptable.